So today's Cardinal lesson, we're talking about long-term care, and we're doing it within the context of a caregiver story. And I made this video and I wrote it before I had an accident over the weekend. And on Monday this week, my wife was to have surgery, and she did have surgery. And of course, I'm her caregiver. And I'm taking her there. I'm waiting the whole day. I'm getting her home. Can't drive herself home. And I'm hanging around for as long as I need to take care of her. And so I'm out playing golf on Sunday, and I hit the side of a cart path, take a fall, throw out my knee. I'm laying there, and so now the first thing I thought about is who in the world is going to get Rhonda to the hospital tomorrow to have her surgery done? And then the next thing I thought about is how am I going to get out, for starters? And I had my brother there and another guy we were playing golf with, and they're trying to pick up a 300-pound man at 6'3". And um, anyhow, so I got up, got in the cart, drove back to the clubhouse. They kept playing golf. I told them to. I said, I'll get somebody at the clubhouse to help me out. And so I get in the car. Of course, I called her immediately. She's still fine. It's Sunday, and we go to the ortho emergent care. And I don't want to tell you the whole story. I wish I had an exciting story, like I was skiing or something. And this was an old man getting in and out of a golf cart kind of thing. And I'm lucky I fell on the grass. But you know, I'm her caregiver. She's my caregiver, and I never really thought about both of us needing care at the same time. So thank the Lord that my sister-in-law and brother-in-law just came up immediately. He took care of me. Her twin sister took care of her, and we all live happily ever after. Other than the fact that I'm going to be using a walker for a little while. I mean, it's really fun getting around with that. But the show must go on, so I just thought I'd give a little context to this story. And what we want to do is we're going to talk today about a presentation that I sat through 2 weeks ago. That was very impactful, from a lady who's a financial planner, CFP like me and Tom, and she was talking about what she did for many of her clients, and then specifically she gave us a letter that one of her clients, she helped them construct, and I got her permission to use it as a guide and on this video. So we got a lot for you today, and I want to turn it over to Tom, and I want Tom to talk about like why we're doing this video.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this video because there is a crisis in your future that might happen. And you need to have a plan in place to prepare for that crisis. Because in absence of a plan, your family's going to be making decisions and you might end up not doing what you desire to do. And so, what we want to do today is really give you the tools to be able to help create this plan. This isn't the insurance. I mean, we have a lot of videos where we talk about long term care insurance. That's not today's video. Today is really about the plan of care. What are my desires? Do I want to stay at home? Do I want to go to a facility? In what scenarios do I want to do each? And really come up with a plan there. Because, like I said, in absence of this, your family takes on a huge burden, and a lot of times your care ends up suffering. And so, what I want to do is I'll bring up the show notes. These are at the link below our video. They're also on our website, and we have the board here. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on this chart. And so, I think one thing that's really important to know is when we bring up long-term care and we talk about it with all the plans that we do in our practice, is immediately people jump to a nursing home or skilled nursing facility. That's the only thing they're thinking about. And what this chart really illustrates is it's much more encompassing than that. There are lots of different levels of care that go into long term care. And nursing home is just a small portion of that. I mean, really, there's a lot more involved here. And so, Hans, I don't know if you want to speak to this at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, this presentation really impacted me. So the top of the board today, what we're going over here is all the different types of care. If you're one of these people that said, "Oh, I'll deal with that when it happens. I got enough money. I'll pay for it myself. I'll just," you're just kind of one of these people that push this off. If I have to go to a nursing home, um, do me in or something. People have a lot of simple things, or they just say they'll handle it at the time. And so I want to just show you in this chart that showed me all the stuff you're signing up for. People that are in care, they need several types of care and they come up at different times. And this is not only for the person getting the care, which is you, it's also for the caregivers, which many times is your children, your adult children, or your spouse, your wife or husband. And we're talking about physical care, custodial care, family care, financial care, coordinating care, safety care, mental care, residence care, progressive care, relational care, emotional care, legal care, personal possession care, survivor's care, and many, many more types. And all of this stuff ends up affecting the caregivers too. And I think you're going to find when you get into the letter, just in a minute here, you're going to find out that a lot of people who are married don't want this falling on their spouse. They want their spouse to continue living and having a life besides totally dedicated to taking care of the person who needs the care and actually giving the care. So I want to bring Tom back on, and I want to hear what Tom has to say about all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand everything that goes into this. And you really don't know what this looks like unless you've really either personally experienced or you've had a close loved one that has experienced this. And so, I mean, a lot of people, if you haven't, that's great. I mean, that's really is, I don't wish this on anybody. But I know Hans has been through this with his mom. I got sick back when I was younger, and my wife was having to take care of me. And I really saw what this looked like. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm the one needing care. And so at some level, I've got the hard situation, but it was much harder on my wife. Her having to run the house, having to take care of our kids, having to take care of me, get me to doctors and back and forth. She ended up getting sick during all that because she was just overexerting herself. And we see that all the time. And so to say something like, I'm going to leave this, my kids will take care of me, or maybe you're talking to your kids and say, oh, mom and dad will take care of you. They really don't know what that looks like. And do you really want to put that burden on them? I mean, that's something you want to think through. And so I think it's really important to understand how all of these play into it. And of course, your family is going to be involved in this. They're going to be helping coordinate all of these things. And again, they might be hiring people to come in to do that, which we'll get to in the letter. Is there are different scenarios where maybe the care looks different and depending on what your situation is. So ultimately, we just want you to think through this now when you're not in a crisis, because if you're having to make these decisions while you're in crisis, it becomes a lot more difficult. And so I'll get back to the show notes just real quickly. And this is the letter that Hans was referring to. If you this doesn't have to be your letter. This really is just serving as a guide of a letter that you can create. So you can change these around, but it gives you sort of a framework of how to approach this and what situations to think through. Because it's important to do that while you're not in a crisis situation.
Yeah, I took her letter and shortened it, leaving the essential stuff, and then changed a few things, not much, but the intent would be that if you want to go forward with this, I mean, if you want to call us and sit down and have us within the context of financial planning help you with this letter, or maybe do it at the end of that, or if you just want to take it yourself and you don't so much copy it, if you want something different than what's in the letter, then just put that in there. The important thing is that you very clearly state to your kids, is really who this is going to, your adult kids, or if you don't have children, whoever it is that's going to be looking after you, a niece or a nephew or a cousin or somebody close in your church or whoever it is, a best friend or a best friend's daughter. I mean, people, you need to be lining these people up now in your 60s so that if something like this happens, all this stuff is thought through and it's also paid for. So the letter breaks, it's for a couple. So if you're not a couple, if you're a single individual, you can just go to the surviving spouse and you could add under their single individual who is cognitively strong, or you could say for the surviving spouse not cognitively strong, you could just put for the single person not cognitively strong. So I mean, you could just have this part of it if you're not married. So we're going to start off with the letter that it was for a couple, and they broke it into 4 parts, and they're saying, so when we need care, or one of us needs care, if we're both living and we're both cognitively strong, then this is what we want to have happen. And we prefer to stay at home as long as possible. It didn't say we only want to stay at home, but it's just making that statement. Our preference is to be cared for in our home as long as possible. And then number 2, it says we prefer not to be each other's caregiver to protect the quality of life for both of us. And that's what really hit hard with me is that if something happens to me and I need long-term care, that's something that's a daily thing, and it just don't. And I want to be at home, and I also want my wife to go out and do things, and have a life which could go on for many years and beyond me. But even during this, she needs a break. She's going to be doing plenty of care in spite of this plan, um, regardless, and vice versa. If she was to get into a care situation, um, she doesn't want me to be the caregiver. So number 3, we prefer professional caregivers versus family members to attend to continence and highly private matters. So um, that's pretty clear. Uh, if we're no longer mobile, we are willing to relocate near our children, grandchildren who are willing to help. It is very important to us that we are not a burden on our children, grandchildren, but we can be surrounded by family who can visit us and help manage the administration of our care. And number 5, our preference to pay for care is to use funds in this order. Number 1, A, long-term care insurance. So this is presuming these people have long-term care insurance. That's first. Number 2, cash flow from all income sources minus supporting funds for our lifestyle. So if there's extra cash flow um, beyond the supporting of the lifestyle for the healthy one, um, we want you to use that. Uh, the next one is the remaining IRAs. And I say this because I see this a lot, is that people tend to spend the not IRA money because they don't want to take anything more than the minimum distribution, when in reality, you're better off paying for care out of the IRAs and then deducting the payments for the care as a medical expense and offsetting. And then if you're going to leave money to the next generation, leave them money that the taxes have already been paid. And then um, the last section is non-qualified assets, money we have in the bank and a brokerage account. Um, Liquidate those last. Um, so that's the order that they want the care paid for. And that's both living and cognitively strong. So I want to bring Tom on and just see if Tom has some comments at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I like how this letter is broken down, and again, you can find those in the show notes. But I like how they specify the different situations where if we have a couple, what happens if we're cognitively strong, and then what happens if we're not cognitively strong, or one of you isn't cognitively strong, because that's a different scenario that looks different depending on where you're at. So if you don't have anything, if you still have your mind with you and you're still sharp in that front, that space, then you can stay at home a lot longer. Like the physical care can be provided at home for a long time. It's when you start having cognitive issues like dementia, like Alzheimer's, it becomes really hard to stay at home. And so you need to have that sort of specified of like, okay, if this happens, I know it might not be realistic for me to stay home, because what we see all the time is, there wasn't really a lot of conversation with the family of what they wanted, but they always just said, and a lot of this was because they didn't really want to talk about it. It's like, oh, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay home. Like, don't ever put me in a home. And that's not really a realistic possibility. I mean, that can be your goal. You can prefer to stay at home, but there are scenarios where it's just not safe for you to stay at home. And so we want you thinking through that now, because that's going to make it a hard decision for your kids. Because if you've told your kids forever, never put me somewhere, but then they have to because there's just not safe to keep you home, they end up with a lot of guilt on that. And it's like, I know my mom didn't want to be here, but I can't take care of her. I can't live with her 24/7. I have my job. I'm taking care of my family. We have to put her somewhere. And you just need to have that honest conversation and really reflect that on yourself of, do you want to put your kids through that? Or do you want to put your spouse through that? But I think it's also important to know that if you're still cognitively strong, then it's much easier to stay at home. So I like how that's broken down in the letter. Really, we just want you to start thinking about this, have these conversations. They are not fun conversations to have. It's not fun to think this might happen, but ultimately, this could happen. And when it does happen, it is a crisis, whether you have this plan or not. But when you have the plan, it makes it a whole lot more manageable than there was no plan in place to start with.
Sure. So the next section, all the stuff is pretty much the same, but it's so if the first spouse is deceased and we've got the one that survived, still cognitively strong, it's pretty much the same stuff happening. Where this is a single person, right now, cognitively strong, and then when they need care, they're cognitively strong. They're pretty much saying the same thing, minus the business about the spouse not taking care of them. So the third category is both living. So we're both living, but one of us is not cognitively strong. And what we're saying is that we prefer the healthy one of us stay at home as long as possible, or consider a healthcare community where we can both live. So they're relieving, this is a big burden when one of them has dementia and the other one is just fine, then they don't want to leave their spouse, which is natural, and they can still stay together. But this is relieving them of the burden. Is the healthy one, the cognitively strong one, and physically stays home. The other one goes into a memory care, and that's going to be a lot better on both people. And then they go visit her. I mean, I have a lot of people that I'm familiar with that go there every day. So that's one alternative that they state. Or we would consider moving to a healthcare community that's designed for this, to have one cognitively strong person and the other one not. And there, we have many of those throughout the country. So they're just stating their wishes and creating a scenario where they could stay together. The second one is that we prefer that if one of us is not cognitively well, that this person go into care facility to preserve the well-being and safety of the whole family. I mean, we went through this ourselves, is that there's a lot of guilt, is like, she can come here, she can come here, she can come here. And then we looked at the care. The best situation was to put my mom in the right facility, very nice, very upscale, right in the middle of all three of us. And we went there frequently, all of us did, throughout every day. And it was a good workable situation because she was not cognitively strong. And then our preference is to pay for the funds the same way, long-term care insurance, then next out of cash flow or excess cash flow, next out of any remaining IRA, and then next out of the taxable savings, and do it in that order. And then, it also goes through the surviving spouse or the single person is not cognitively strong. And it just says, I prefer to go in a facility for the health, well-being, and safety of the whole family, including mine. I do not have a preference to the location of the care facility. It's important that I'm not a burden to my family and grandchildren, children, but I'd like to be surrounded by them so that they can visit and help manage the administration of my care. And then it goes over the same thing, how they want to pay for the funds in that order. I think whether you're a single individual or you're a couple, you would be wise to take some time to write a letter like this. And then if you're a single person, it can be shorter because it's just two situations. If I'm cognitively strong, this is what I want. And then if I'm not cognitively strong, same list of stuff, but this is what I want to have happen. So I want to bring Tom back on, and I want to for some final comments, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think this letter is powerful. I think it's important to do. You can sort of have this with all your legal documents of will. I think it's also important to have these conversations with whoever the loved ones are, if they're kids, if it's a spouse, if it's nieces and nephews, whoever that is who would be taking over this responsibility. Have that conversation about this letter. I mean, you can use this letter as a good way to initiate that conversation. It's like, hey, I've written this. Here are my wishes. I want to at least talk about it a little bit before we actually need to do this, because I think that would be important. I think it's oftentimes on this show we do long-term care. We're always talking about the insurance because the insurance is a great way to fund for the care, but the insurance is just the funding mechanism. that's not really the plan of care. What we're talking about here on today is really writing out your plan of care, what you want to have happen, and then communicating that with your loved ones. So again, that they have sort of a roadmap to take when this, if this does happen to you. So, like Han said, I think this is important really for everyone to do, whether you're a couple or single. And like I said, you will have a lot of relief once you get done. The process of going through this is maybe not that fun, but at the end of it, you will have a relief knowing that you've at least taken care of this piece.
Okay. And we look at the 7 planning areas, the 7 check boxes. Social Security, that's the first check that's used when you're paying for care yourself. Medicare, Medicare is going to pay for the front end of skilled care, like a matter of a month or 2, or possibly 3. But it doesn't do a whole lot for custodial or anything for custodial care. Obviously, the videos about long-term care, IRA 401k, if there's still substantial money left there, we want to spend that money if we're having to pay for care ourselves, because we're going to have a corresponding tax deduction for the medical expense. Income is the same business, is that we're going to spend the income to pay for the care if we're paying for it ourselves, before we start dipping into assets. For estate planning, this is huge because we've got to think about the surviving spouse and not leaving them impoverished. And then we got to look after the kids and the estate, so that it doesn't get all used up paying for care. And then taxes. Taxes affect everything. And the tax deductibility of care that's paid for yourself. So with that, I want to bring Tom back on. I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.